Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. Good morning, Decoders. How are we doing today? I hope everybody is having a phenomenal day. I am having a slightly stressful one. I've tried to record this intro more times than I care to even admit out loud, and technology is just not working in my favor. So just fun fact, if you're having a rough day, you're not alone. Hopefully this episode helps to bring a little bit of sunshine and laughter to your day, because I am joined by Stephanie Wright today, who is an absolute mastermind when it comes to navigating your insurance contracts, deciding if going out of network is right for you, and kind of battling against the insurance carriers to make sure your practice is getting paid for the hard work that they're putting in. So I want to tell you a little bit about Stephanie and what she does for the dental industry, and then we'll dig into today's episode. So Stephanie provides strategic analytical coaching and practice health assessments and coaching for dental offices to make sure they're reaching their fullest potential. Stephanie is great at helping with anything from hygiene-specific growth and opportunity to insurance training and utilization to healthy leadership and communication skills. Stephanie's pretty much got you covered on all of those topics. She is a fellow open dental nerd, so if you are an open dental user, she may be someone you want to reach out to. Let's also not forget about dental insurance. She feels that the effect of dental insurance companies not increasing with the rate of inflation, continued denials, and restrictive contracts is really hurting the growth of practices across the country. So Stephanie is able to navigate this wild world for you and become less dependent on insurance and get back to helping patients with the care they need instead of the care that the dental insurance dictates for you. So in this episode, like I said, we're going to cover all of those topics and so much more. If you are not connected with Stephanie, I strongly recommend you go check her out on social media. She is hilarious and a genius on all things insurance, so you will not be scared wrong by checking her out. Stephanie is a no BS kind of gal, and that is the approach that we take to this episode. So there may or may not be some language in here that is not suitable for work. So just bear in mind that there may be a small minor curse or two dropped in this episode, which is a little bit outside of our norm here. But we really encourage all of our guests to be super authentically themselves on these shows. So you're in for a penny and for a pound. Before we dig into this week's episode, I do just want to mention that this week is sponsored again by SKF Practice Solutions, which is an open dental consulting agency helping offices across the country reduce team burnout by removing redundancies in their practice management software. They are offering a great deal for all of our listeners, 20% off of their comprehensive software exam, which is an analysis of your software. It is a 100-point checklist that they go through for each of their clients and analyze how they're using the software, how it can be improved, and how to make it just a little bit more user-friendly for both the software users and the patients in the practice. So feel free to check out their website and use Dental Decoders at checkout for 20% off of the comprehensive software exam. Without further ado, let's dig into this week's episode with Stephanie Wright. Good morning, Decoders. Welcome to this week's episode of the Dental Decoders podcast. This week I have Stephanie Wright with me. I'm so excited to have you here, Stephanie, and thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. So I get excited about some of these things.
You're going to find out, listeners, that Stephanie is she's probably the only person that I've ever met in the industry that can match my energy all the time. So it's going to be a fun conversation. For those listeners who maybe aren't lucky enough to know who you are just yet, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Practice management consultant. I've been in dentistry for 20 years. Background with being in the Coast Guard and some college education in business management. I started realizing when I finally got into dentistry as an RDA that I wanted to really move into the administrative side of things, communication, growth and enhancement and systems and processes. So that led into about 10 years ago, starting my own company. the entire time I've never been able to understand insurance and like why on earth they're like patients aren't getting these things done. I don't understand why things don't change. And that's really what drew that curiosity. I'm like, how do we master the system? And, doctors, it was so crazy to me to find out how little doctors knew about insurance at all, right? Like even some of the things that be considered fraud they're doing, right? Like because it does. Like you basically work for Delta Dental, whether you own your practice or not, and other insurance companies, because it has to be driven by that. And we really have to change that. And that's something that I've been focusing on the last 5 years is educating the patients, educating the doctors, and learning how we can have the patients kind of fight back for us.
First of all, for those of you who are listening and can't see, she's got the cutest shirt on ever that I absolutely need. It says dental insurance is not insurance. Go check out the YouTube video so you can see and covet this shirt as much as I am right now. But I think it's so perfect for the episode. So when you go in and you work with a practice, you go into an office, it's heavily PPO. What does that process look like? What are the first steps that you take with just talking with this office to figure out if going in or out of network is the best solution for them?
Yeah. So I spend 2 days in the practice at full operation. I want to make sure that I'm identifying the communication that's going within there. I data mine the entire time. I'm not trying to look for faults within the practice as far as, you should be doing this for the ADA standard of care, right? However, before coming in, I ask the doctors, what is your philosophy of care? And then I want to make sure that they're not allowing the patients or the insurance to dictate that. And so often, doctors don't know. They don't have time to manage a lot of that data and the productivity and such. And insurance has driven that aspect of it as well, too, right? They're only good with a drill in their hand. And so identifying how they communicate, where is the trust on here? I'm looking at the data as far as what is our patient attrition retention that we have? Where is our growth opportunities at? And again, if I'm coming in and a doctor says, oh yeah, the traditional 2 exams a year, all children get fluoride and x-rays, and even then perio, I look at that and I don't think that it should necessarily always be up to 30% that is said, but I have to make sure and identify, right? So if I look in here and we see child prophies, which if you think as a whole, right, you should have, if you're telling me that every child gets fluoride at their appointments, you would have like a pie circle that's like a 50-50, right? Because it's 2 cleanings here, 2 fluorides with it. And so it's not always perfect, which is fine. That happens. But if somebody tells me that they are getting them 2 times a year and they have 10% of that pie is fluoride, they're having what's called an a la carte practice. The patients and the insurance are truly dictating that care. And so if you think you have a problem now, you're going to have a much more significant problem once you remove insurance over that. And especially when it has to do with the hygiene schedule. Patients have this mentality that it's covered at 100%. So, making sure that we don't have patients that come in and decide that they don't want to have their exam, or do I have to have these x-rays? That happens right now, even with, insurance on there. And we just let it happen because we don't want to like push back up against the system. And we don't also have that time to continually educate our patients because we're breaking our backs patient after patient. So there's a lot that goes into the data side of things and how I identify how the team is communicating with treatment presentation, educating the patient on their dental plan as well too. And then I look at that breakout with the insurance as well too. What's our impact going to be? And I'll start staging that as far as like, this is what 10% loss of that insured patients look like and what your new collections would be, 20%, 30%. And we find that break even point.
I want to keep exploring the insurance conversation, but I got really excited about something you said earlier. So I want to throw a little wrench into the flow of the conversation.
That's right.
So you were talking about patients who say they don't want x-rays or patients who say that they don't want fluoride. Now, if that is the office standard of care, what advice are you giving those practices on how to have that conversation with the patient? Because I find so many practices are like, okay, well, we'll do them next time, or sign this piece of paper that says we told you to do x-rays. And exactly,
No.
that's my thought.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let me know your thoughts on that. How does that look?
Yeah. So I always tell them about one of the most scary court cases that I had to help out with. And so, because I am very, very detailed with my analysis, I have been called in on court cases to help the doctor on it. And they don't generally hold up in court. I had a doctor that got sued for over $200,000 over an FMX. This patient had refused x-rays for many, many years, signed off on it each and every time. And by the time she had insurance where she finally would accept getting the FMX, they found that there was radiolucency on 8 and 9, sends them over to the oral surgeon. Oral surgeons, like, you have internal root resorption that's going on, you have an infection that's up there. And this patient got furious, right? As you would. And it turned into being blamed by the doctor for neglecting the fact of, hey, this is what you hold all of your other patients to. How come you didn't hold this patient? How come you didn't educate this patient? So, there's one thing to be said for some refusal of x-rays, right? And that patient, you better have some documentation that justifies it, right? They haven't had any sort of carious lesions in the last couple of years. They have optimal oral health. They don't miss any of their appointments, any of the such, right? So I think that there's a small window to give some grace on that. But generally speaking, our licenses are on the line, right? So having that patient and discussing with them, here's two things. They come in and we generally know which patients are, we're like, oh, she's going to die this again, right? And so it's that conversation during the huddle prior to say, all right, doctor, I need you to go ahead and back me up, because that does happen. Doctors kind of don't have that backbone a little bit when they come in as well too, right? So that also creates the lack of motivation within the team. And they're like, oh, doctors are just going to flip flop on this anyway, right? And sorry, no disrespect to doctors. You're just trying to be nice. Mm-hmm. So if we have that conversation prior at huddle, this is what's going on. I need you to back me up. And the patient comes and sits in the chair and we tell them, all right, this is what you're scheduled for today for. We don't ask them, do you want to have it done? Never, ever ask. If that's something that you believe in, no, don't ask. This is what you need. The patient will push back. And so then at that point, that's where we educate them and we let them know this is a liability. And unfortunately, there's areas I have to be able to see that I can't with the naked eye, and so I can't do this today, or, we'll schedule you back if you have some more questions. And the patients either they're going to get up and leave and be fussy. But at this point, most patients, they end up sitting in the chair and like, fine, and they have it done because you're just giving them an ultimatum on it. This is not acceptable.
Love that. That's one of the areas that I see very regularly in my line of work as well is, well, patient didn't want x-rays, so we had them sign this piece of paper and it was a new patient. And then we went ahead and did the prophy and all of the things and are bringing them back in for more visits, and like trying to get a claim paid for a patient who's refused x-rays is a little bit difficult. So
yeah, it really is. And that is a challenge. And the thing is even if we start from the beginning with our new patients and within our office policies, we paint out what is our philosophy care within there, right? And then we also tell them that, unfortunately, if this is not followed, because my promise and commitment to you is to provide you with the care that you need and that you deserve, right? And then this is how we go ahead and receive that. And not, patients go ahead and they take documents, they just like scroll through. I'm guilty of it myself, just signing the bottom of it. I'm not going to read it, right? So as we have new patients come in, we have this great opportunity to have a kind of an interview with them. We sit down, we ask them if they had any questions about the forms that they had filled out online, and that we wanted to discuss a few highlighted points on there to make sure they didn't have any questions. And that's when we can have the conversation about, not showing up to their appointment, receiving the courtesy for that 48 hours notice, and what happens afterward, right? And so same thing with x-rays or any of the care that we believe in is to say, this is what you're going to have at every one of your appointments. And you're setting the tone, right? So it's educating the existing patients as well too, to making sure, and that can kind of come with some sort of eloquence in regards to if we have a patient that's been in there for a long time and we really are going to work hard on changing this and get these. Letting that patient know prior, right? So we're confirming that appointment. Again, we're letting them know what it is they're having done, right? As long as we're talking to them on the phone, obviously. When they come in and they sit down, and this is a patient that's had any amount of treatment, any amount of decalcification, anything that is going on, and even specifically with perio, it's cut and dry. This is it. However, when you have a patient that comes in and maybe they do have very optimal oral health, they haven't had any issues, and again, I hate to say it, but if their insurance pays for it every 2 years, we can offer some sort of grace because of everything else. What is their caries risk assessment that we have behind it? But we also have to make sure that they know at minimum, every 2 years, period. I'm so sorry, but this is where I draw the line. And if anything changes within your oral health, we're going to go back to, at the very minimum, annual.
Another conversation that we're having with patients ahead of time and ways that we should be setting the tone for things are to pivot back into that insurance conversation. If you're going to be making a change in your credentialing, in your network status, when you are working with a client to go out of network, especially because you're working with offices who are going out of network with Delta pretty heavily, and that being such a beast in the industry, what does that look like for you? How are you telling them to talk to their patients? What kind of issues are you seeing arising? And how does that kind of unfold for offices who are considering going out of network with Delta?
Yeah. So one of the main questions I get all the time, how long is this going to take? And I'm like, okay, well, would you diagnose your patient with an exam over the phone? No. Right. So everybody's path to this is very, very much customized. I have had practices that were in a few different direct participation with no umbrellas, and we were able to accomplish everything within 4 months. Right. But they had like real strong systems. They had so many different things that were going on, and there were direct participation and not the umbrella nightmare. So then you have the patients or the clients that have all of the different umbrellas. You have Connection and Dentamax and whatever other ones that are out there, right? That kind of intertwine, because you'll have some Cigna plans that are paying towards this one, but some that they're using this fee schedule. So we really have to unwind all of that spider web mess that we have going on there. And a lot of it is the audits within the EOBs that are coming back. So as soon as we can identify kind of who's on that hierarchy and start coming down to it, that's when we can really identify a timeline. And again, it really depends on the systems that are already in the practice as well too. When we get to the Delta aspect of it, I'm looking at what's our AR yet? If we can't collect a copayment, you're not going to get somebody to go ahead and pay in full the day of service, right? Like I will flat out tell you that. I'll work with you. I'll help you out with those conversations. And, how do we go ahead and transition our patients that are used to just walking out the door? But it happens through a full recall, and you're still going to have some stubborn ones out there. So that's a big one. On average, across the nation, we have 60 to 70% of our insurance income is coming from one single source. So it is, which by the way, this is like a backward Delta logo, because, apparently you can kind of get in trouble for using their logo otherwise. And it's a little bit altered, but anyway. So, we really have to make sure that we're educating the patients on this. So a few things that you can inch towards that is using things like the non-covered services document as well too, right? So let's start having that conversation for services that we're providing for our patients, that we're educating them in that regard, right? So especially because of the timeline on it. If we have their goal being 6 months, 9 months, whatever it might be, we have this perfect opportunity that only at checkout, not when the patient checks in, because God forbid, we do not want the doctor or any of the clinicians to talk about insurance ever. Yep. Like they just don't. They don't know as many details, and they shouldn't. It's going to go ahead and make sure their appointment's going to run behind. So at checkout, as the patient is not going to be coming back in a couple of weeks, if this is somebody that is coming back for their 6-month recall, we're going to go ahead and provide them with an absolute printout of their benefits that are available online, right? And it cannot be verbally said. Otherwise, we will be the liars if the patient or if the insurance doesn't reimburse what it says. They have to have that document in their hand. And we even go a step further and let them know, I'm going to email that to the email that I have on file as well, too. We want to let you know of some changes that we have coming up with our contract with your insurance company. And it's so important to stick with that contract tidbit, right? So if we think about it, and I have commercial insurance through my husband, you get a booklet that's like this big, okay? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, patients have no idea that their dental benefits are different than their health benefits. You will absolutely get patients all the time calling up and saying, I have priority health. That's a big one here. No, you don't. You're working for one of the big health systems. You have Delta, right? So that means psychologically, when we go ahead and we use things like out-of-network, non-participating, they're going to go ahead and reflect back on that big booklet that they received on an annual basis that has 2 columns, in and out-of-network. And out-of-network is atrocious in most cases. So we have to go ahead and start having that conversation about a change in our contractual status, a change within our contract on here. And what does that mean for you? When you come back into your appointment, it doesn't mean, as you can see here on this breakdown of benefits, is this column here represents when we remove our contract within your plan. And so as you can see here, your benefits, either they don't change at all, or they're minimally changed. Okay. We'll have some patients that also understand, well, yeah, but what about your fee and their fee? And I mean, honesty, we don't have that right now. However, we're not going to babysit. If the patient really wants to know, to say, hey, this is the date that this goes active. If you would like to go ahead and contact us back, we can go ahead then and hopefully be able to identify what it is your investment is going to be for this, right? The patients have to know, and we have to repeat it, that we're going to take care of the claim processing. We're going to do all of that stuff, right? So we're really hitting up a lot of those patients as they're leaving and having that conversation. So when they come back in 6 months and we send that letter out, we're decreasing the amount of the volume of phone calls that are coming back and trying to field that stuff. And again, at checkout, and only when the patient's not coming back. And we'll hit everybody else up on the letter that goes out.
Absolutely. So we're both open dental wizards, and we have a lot of the same like core principles inside of what we do, even though what we do is so very different. So anytime, and we have a lot of mutual clients, and anytime that we get to work with those mutual clients, it always makes my life so much easier because we have such similar mindsets on things. So I build out a treatment plan in open dental, and I take away a lot of those additional columns, and we talk about what our fee is, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get a surprise bill as a patient if you know what our fee is versus looking at all the little nuances inside of the plan. So I try and streamline that process. So one of the things that I just want to share with you is that working with your clients, and anytime we have mutual clients, that process is just so smooth for me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that very
I don't
much.
bend easily on it. I tell people all the time, and I'm guilty of like, we just get into our emotion of things and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I tell people all the time, you're going to kind of suck at the conversation, right? Like, it's okay. And you're going to stumble trying to figure out what to do to manipulate on your computer in front of you before you present that plan. If you just tell a patient, like, oh gosh, my computer's kind of slow today, they don't know that you're struggling on the other side of it, right? So it is. And so to be real with the team members, specifically at checkout, and to say, like, it's okay. Like, you're not going to win them all. You are going to kind of suck at it. You are going to stumble because it takes us 30 times to do something before it's habit. We can actually do it as well too. But yeah, that presentation is key. And even with the insurance companies, that they play nicely. They pay us directly. They generally have very reasonable fees that they accept from us, sometimes with just a tiny margin or none at all. But we still have to make sure that we're verbalizing to the patient, not just having it on our treatment plan each and every time. It's in our financial policy right from the beginning. It's written out on there. And then we verbalize once again and just letting the patient know. And you're like, oh, insurance, if they pay differently than what we estimated for your investment, you'll receive an invoice from us. And everything that we have on there, even when we go ahead and we email them a receipt, I make sure that in that email, there is something again too that states, this is a courtesy to you. This is an estimate from what the limited information that we received from your dental benefit plan. That's it.
Mm-hmm. I think
you can't put yourself on like a broken record repeat.
Yes. I think that like the verbalizing it piece is where a lot of offices don't maybe go, because it's an awkward conversation. And I think that's the most important piece, because if I go to a mechanic and I get an estimate of how much it's going to cost to get my oil changed, and then I go to pick up my car and they're like, oh, by the way, it's actually 6 times what we quoted you because our estimate was off.
Like,
sorry.
What?
I would not be very happy with the poor person who had to check me out at the mechanic's office. And I think that like, just like we have to teach our patients that dental insurance is different than medical insurance, we also have to teach our patients that our estimate is based on factors outside of our control. Yeah. And our fee is $200. But here's what we think. We hope, fingers crossed, your insurance might pay for you, but be aware there's more than likely going to be some difference in this, and we'll refund you or bill you. If you don't say that piece out loud, then the patient's going to assume that estimate is the same thing as your mechanic's estimate.
I mean,
they're going to
Karen out there is going to lose her mind over the $3. And I always joke around about that. I was like, we've got patients that they'll blow up over $3. So, we have to make sure we're on our A game. It's the same thing with how you can accept higher case acceptance as well too, right? That consistent power handoff from the hygienist to the doctor. And then, the doctor repeating that again. So the patient's like hearing. At checkout, we go ahead and we do that power handoff again. And then the treatment planner says, again, what is being done and what's coming up next. And we're repeating these things over and over and over again. And it's for a purpose. Like they will remember it the more and more that they hear these things. And we have to train our patients, so if we're making this transition over as well too, I'm going to put it out there, some of the more geriatric population that we have, they are used to just kind of walking out the door. And, we can be sensitive to a point with that. When we go fee for service, absolutely not. They have to pay because guess what? That insurance company is not going to pay them up to our fee. Okay. And so, especially the ones that go ahead and the assignment of benefits get sent to the patient. And so, making sure that we let them know and we look through the account the first time around, just say, all right, Phyllis, the next time you do come in, you will have to pay for that investment, the day of service on here for your copay and your deductible. Right. And so once we start getting that training portion of that part in place and pulling the trigger on fee for service is not such a hard conversation because we're collecting, we know how to, and the patient in utilizing verbiage like investment is one of my biggest ones, right? Because you're investing in your oral health. And the reality is dental insurance is not insurance. It's like $1,000 coupon that they get every year. Like that's it.
100% could not agree more. So for our listeners who are listening to this conversation and we're just starting to dip our toe into all of these things that you do and they want to learn more, where can they find you?
You can find me at my website as well, innovativeadvisorysolutions.com. You're welcome to call or text me, even WhatsApp, 616-826-8007. And just, I'm very, very passionate about this, especially younger doctors that are coming in. And so reaching out to me, telling me what it is in your goals, and we start that conversation and we'll schedule an assessment. Let's get the ball rolling. Because even if your goal is within 6 months and it's not obtainable, because of other factors, I'm walking you through the process. I'm known for taking practices fee for service, but I am a full-on practice management coach. I'm going to coach you through every step of this.
Love that. We'll link everything in the show notes below. So if you didn't catch all of the digits of the phone number, we've got it in there for you. No need to try and text while driving. So we always end our episodes. When we wrap, we ask a signature question. And that signature question is, what has been your decoding moment or your secret code that's contributed to the success in your life and career?
You're going to fail. You're going to fall on your face, and embracing that and taking everybody and making sure that they're comfortable with that as well too, right? Like how much we can go ahead and support the people in their weaknesses just as much as their strengths. I want the same as well too. And if I would have known that 20 years ago, I think I'd be a lot happier myself. Right. And, we don't have to hold ourselves on this pedestal and tear ourselves apart, because the reality is you're going to fail. You're going to not hit the beat each time. I still have to accept that I'm sometimes not the right choice for a practice management solution for a client as well too. And sometimes they're not the right choice for me either. So
I love that. I think embracing failure is something that is like so ingrained in us not to do. Like failure is bad. And I like to be the controversial one who goes against the grain. And I'm like, how many times can I fail at these steps in my career, because it helps you learn all the things. So I love that you said that, because that's a mentality that I prescribe to as well. So fantastic.
Yeah. And we have to be a cheerleader for others when we see these failures and just say, it's okay. I'm not perfect all the time either. No sweat. Let's go out and let's work on this. And that's how we should be treating everybody.
Just give everybody a little bit of grace, including, most importantly, yourself.
Yes.
And then you'll be good to go. Well, Stephanie, this has been such a good conversation. I appreciate so much you spending some time with me and just enlightening our audience on all of the wonderful things that can come with potentially going fee for service. Can't wait to chat again soon. We should definitely do this again sometime.
We should do an open dental one. Share the top secrets on each side.
That's what I was thinking too. Two peas in a pod. So yeah, we'll talk again for our open dental conversation. But thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to chat again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.